Today on the Self Smarter podcast.
It's a big deal because what happened is that people's expectations changed overnight. And because the lockdown was such an extensive period of time, at least here in the United States, it forced people to think differently about their circumstances and the way that they want to work.
That's right.
Hi, we're Danelle and Megan, the hosts of this conversation-centric podcast for leaders seeking to be better every day. Whether you choose to be a leader in the workplace, at home, or in your community, we believe the most effective leaders are equipped to not only be self-starters, but self-smarter.
Hello, and welcome to Self Smarter. I'm Megan, and this is my friend and co-host, Danelle.
Hello.
Hot topic alert. Hot topic.
Oh, great.
We've got a big one today. It's work remote.
Ew.
I know. Ew. And here's the cold, harsh truth. And truly, like during the pandemic, I'm sure like the rest of the companies operating during that time experienced the work remote thing was just a complete culture shift for us. Like we did know how to work remote, but we had some other struggles, which I think we're going to talk about. We were in the office 5 days a week for the most part pre-pandemic.
For the most part, yeah.
For the most part. Then the pandemic arrives and poof, everything changes overnight. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that time we had, this is a step back in time, but I want to just anecdote for a minute.
Well, first of all, I forgot all of 2020, so.
Yeah, I blocked that out. But can you pull from your memory bank? I want to say it was late March, so we didn't go back to the office after like March the 18th.
No, March 13th was our last 13th,
day. Okay. Then I want to say it was end of March, early April. We had figured out, we have to have like meetings, like where we would normally get together as a whole company in the same room. We hadn't figured that out yet, but you were like, we really, we need to talk about everything. And so we got on a call. There was one employee. Now it's funny, but it wasn't funny then.
Okay.
And someone was asleep in their bed. They took a nap. Do you remember that? I was mortified.
Yes, I remember it because you talked about it. So you were. I
couldn't get over it.
Well,
I still can't.
I didn't realize it. First of all, so that y'all know that we, as a company, we did work remote occasionally.
We did.
And so, but
fair enough.
We did, but we used conference calls. We did not have Zoom. So what was new to us was obviously everyone was dealing with this societal shock to the system. But then in the workplace, what was new for us was Zoom.
Yeah.
Because normally, again, like I said, we were using conference calls.
Sure.
So this was my first address to the company. So I'm in the mode of presenting our contingency plan as a company.
That's right. That's what it was.
So I was in pretty serious mode.
No, it was a big, sorry, I almost said the word ASS.
You can say ass.
It was a big ass meeting. I'll just spell it for those people who can't spell. God, what an idiot. But no, it was a big ass meeting, and this person was taking a nap.
Well, yes.
I'm still upset.
I know. You've not been able to shake that, so we might need to see someone.
I need to get therapy.
But what that did is, I think what we realized in that moment was we did not have any cultural norms around a meeting on Zoom.
Right.
And so, I don't know that it was the best thing in the world for that individual. It was definitely disrespectful, but we did not know what criteria to set forth to what was acceptable and what was not. So because of that, we were dealing with a lot of people's interpretation on how to show up for Zoom meetings. And so and I know a lot of companies, there's so many incredible stories, hilarious and other, out there about having to adjust to that incredible shift. And for us, our first big eye opener was someone with their eyes closed.
Right. Which then only made us worry. Oh, we were like, oh, great. Now all the meetings for the rest of the year, so people are going to think it's okay to take a nap. So the most awkward thing was after the meeting, I couldn't go forth without addressing this human.
Right. Well, I want also, like, our listeners, please know that we went through all the what might have been happening. Was she sick? No. There was
nothing was wrong.
Nothing was wrong.
I was really tired.
And I felt like I could do this.
I thought I could do that.
Yes.
Oh my God. I thought I was going to die. And then evidently I told another leader about it. And now she's mortified. And now here we are on this podcast telling the world about it. Mortified. But here's the deal. Well, nobody could have seen that coming, obviously. But we've all had to adapt to more work remote scenarios, and then debate about what are we going to do? We're going to go fully remote. We're going to be hybrid remote, blah, 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 all the things, all the variables. And so that's really what we're going to talk about today is the reality of work remote and really some options that leaders can think about. I know this is not something you or I both either like to talk about.
No, I mean, well, first of all, before we dive into work remote, we would be really remiss to not acknowledge all of the work and workers that are out there where work remote is not an option.
Not an option.
So if you're listening to this and you are an airline pilot, first of all, thank you for flying our planes.
Yes.
I know you can't phone that in on Zoom. But the reason why we're talking about this topic is because it is influencing our culture and it's a huge seismic shift. And so we need to talk about so you will know someone in your life and potentially that you will lead, and depending on what you're doing, where work remote will be a topic. And so that's why we've decided to kind of touch on this, even though I have a little bit of an old school mentality around this subject matter, but I've been forced to put my bias aside and to really think about it differently.
Yes, me too.
Yes.
Such a good topic. Okay, stand by. We've got a lot more, but before we move further, we want to have this wonderful little advertisement. Before we start, let me just say that I don't know how we'd make it a day at our company without the help of our trusty IT services partner. Moby Systems has been our IT partner for years, and they keep us connected when computers crash and networks go haywire. The team at Moby is super helpful in understanding of people who don't know what the heck to do when equipment goes south. What I know for sure is that without them, we wouldn't be able to run our business as seamlessly as we do. With Moby Systems in your corner, you have peace of mind that they keep an eye on your company and its IT assets. We're offering our listeners a huge bonus to sign up with Moby Systems. Here's the deal. Our listeners will get their first month's service absolutely free, along with additional goodies. For more information, please visit mobysystems.com. That's MOBE systems.com. And be sure to mention Self Smarter for your first month free. All right, now that our commercial's played, why don't you jump back on top of that soapbox you were just on and complete any thoughts that I interrupted?
No, I want to acknowledge all of the incredible, jobs that exist and people where work remote is not. Sure. I mean, farmers. I'm sorry,
yes,
we need our crops and our fresh food to be picked.
We like to eat.
That is something that there's just so many occupations out there where work remote is not an option. And I want to respect that knowledge. I also want to acknowledge for those of us, who have been in the workforce for a while, that it's okay to have a little bit of a feeling of, this is unusual. This is, we were thrust into this. And I think that's something I want to acknowledge too. And, having been in the workforce for, almost 30 years, I did not believe in work remote. Mm-hmm. And as a company, we did it. We just did it on a very special occasion basis. And so then when we were literally, because of the type of business that we have, and I assume that most of our listeners could be in a similar position, is that we had to rethink. And honestly, it's ended up making us a better company, but it was bumpy. And that's a lot of what we want to share today, because I don't think that, we're going to have another situation where a type of work remote, that a seismic shift will impact businesses. And the more that we understand that, and the more that we become more attentive as leaders to the way society is changing. It's no different than when social media was introduced. And I mean, there's so many examples of it that I think it's important that as leaders, we learn to identify opportunities to be flexible and to be nimble and to think beyond our own, the way it was when we came up,
right.
That whole
those biases.
Yes. And so that's why we're going to talk about this subject today. And again, it may not be the most exciting topic in the world, but the reality is, if you're listening, you know someone who's in this position, and probably many of you have children that are going to be entering the workforce or already in the workforce, and they could potentially benefit from, you listening and hearing some of the stories and some of the facts. We have a lot of stats that we want to share today too. So that's why we are teeing up this topic.
Okay, so on that note, you mentioned stats. So let's just dive right in. This is a hot topic. What has surfaced really since the beginning of the pandemic in terms of statistics, in terms of what's been going on trend-wise? Talk to us a little bit about why this is such a big deal.
It's a big deal because what happened is that people's expectations changed overnight. And because the lockdown was such an extensive period of time, at least here in the United States, it forced people to think differently about their circumstances and the way that they want to work.
That's right, yeah.
So I think it gave people freedoms to think about what made them happy and what didn't. And we have examples of both. Yep. We had a team where we had as equal as many people who were suffering from working remote as we did people who were loving every minute of it and never wanted to come back to an office. So I believe that as a culture and a society, it made us think differently across the board, not just about how we want to work, but because that's what we're focused on today. And the remote piece of it, because it was forced for many, many types of businesses, not all, that it caused, I think there were businesses who just completely ignored it. That, the minute that they could bring people back, they did. And there was not any consideration about what people had come accustomed to. Discovered, whether it was, a working mom, more time at home with our pets. I mean, there was a lot of things that we experienced for a lot of our society for the first time. So there is going to be a huge shift because of that. And, we've done a lot of work on statistics on this particular topic, and we'll share a ton of that in the show notes. But we saw a stat from Upwork that estimates that 22% of the workforce, or 32 million Americans, will completely work remotely by 2025. So while the pandemic was a catalyst for it, the expectation has not waned. And so now we just have this situation to where companies are going to have to either, again, we're going to talk a lot about that, but companies are going to have to make a decision on what they want to do. And then what we'll also, spoiler alert, let you know is that the most important thing is deciding what's best for your particular business, and being able to explain the why behind that. So I do think that, the why is the most critical piece, and we'll share our story and how we think businesses should be proceeding relative to this decision, this huge decision for the businesses, again, where this is an option.
Yeah, the seismic shift has forced everyone into this realization of, who am I going to be now and who am I going to be clearly by 2025 as people's expectations shift. So before we get into the why, let's talk about the what. Okay. So in terms of high level, what options do businesses and business leaders have?
I mean, in office.
Yep.
Okay. So again, we're going to set aside what I will call just a blanket, the essential businesses where people have to physically be, no matter what. The work is, it requires you to be in a particular place. For the rest of the businesses that exist out there, there's the option of we're back in the office full time. We are, or we're 100% remote. Or there's a hybrid model where there's a mixture of both. And who knows? Like there could end up being another option. But to me, the three that exist today are in office, fully 100% remote, and then the hybrid where it's a mixture of in office and and remote.
And clearly there are pros and cons to each. So I was hoping you might let's talk about benefits. Okay. What are the different benefits that businesses can experience by offering either a work remote or a hybrid scenario for their teams?
I think this list is still being formed, by the way, because we're still living through it. But, namely, I think the number one benefit that we have seen and we have learned from others that are experiencing, this shift, other leaders, is that more time working productively. So I think productivity for a lot of businesses that are choosing to either be 100% remote and or partially remote is, again, it's the productivity. And there's a stat from the Beaker-Friedman Institute that surveyed 10,000 employees, and 30% of them told researchers that they were more productive and engaged from working at home. There's other studies out there that found that 55% of the respondents say that work more hours remotely than they do in the physical office. So they're working more when they're remote. Now, I don't know that that's a good thing. And that's something that, but what we're seeing is that people are more motivated by.
Well, it's time.
Time. I mean,
I'm not driving.
Right. So again, and then there's a lot of different studies that are in support of the fact that working remote produces more productivity. We measure that, and we'll talk about specifically what we've learned at DMA here in a minute, but we know this to be true for our organization. Now, we'll also talk about what it took us to get to that point, because that wasn't immediate. Clearly, we had things we had to overcome,
right?
Including when is an appropriate time to nap.
Right, exactly.
In the day.
Yeah. And we did find in 2020, obviously, I don't know, maybe all organizations didn't go through this, but for us, we certainly had, on the aggregate, we had more people working than ever before because people were up and at 'em, and what else are they going to do? Like go on a walk. Right. You can only take the dog to walk so many times,
right?
And so people were working more in 2020. And then as we worked ourselves back into 2021 in a more, slightly more traditional than it was in 2020, we started to level out and get more concerned about, okay, let's work a healthy amount of hours versus an unhealthy amount, And so all that to say, I'm sure everybody's got their own, differences, but the reason why we're able to do that is because we track our hours. So just a little cue there for other leaders. Okay. What else do you got to know?
Advantage with recruiting. And if you are leading a business or you own a business where the option for working remote is available, you better lead with it. It's more, especially for millennials and Gen Z coming into the workforce. So I think that it's important, that an important tool. And we learned a very interesting lesson recently where we posted a job on LinkedIn. Not recently, but in the last year or two. Was it last year? No, it was this year.
This year, the one that we're recruiting for, actually right now, we're in the final stages.
Okay, so wow, it is recently.
Yes.
But we posted a job, the same job that we're posting for now. We posted this job last year.
That's right.
And we did not mention in any type of scenario in terms of the way that, the structure of our work remote or our hybrid model, which is what we have. We had 100 qualified candidates. This time in the description on the LinkedIn post, we stated that we work 1 day remote a week, and we had 24 applicants. Yes. So what was interesting about that is
25% basically of what we had before.
Exactly. So what we learned is that really matters. But the interesting thing is what we got wrong. We literally got our own marketing. Our messaging was wrong because the reality is on normal weeks, we work 1 day a week remote. But the other reality is that we work every other Friday. We work Fridays before, significant holidays. We work 2 weeks remote during December. And so what we failed to understand is the importance. So the better messaging for our company, again, when we're recruiting, is that over 30% of your time at DMA will be working remote, because that signals something very different than 1 day a week remote. Every Monday's work remote at DMA. without a doubt. But we have seen the value. In fact, we polled our employees to find out of these different benefits, and we listed all the benefits relative to the organization, and work remote was one of the top benefits. It wasn't, but the way our hybrid model was something that they highly valued. Yes. So we knew that we were headed down the right path.
Well, what I love about what you just said, that 30% of the time we are working remotely, and that's the better way to market it, is it's in alignment with these statistics.
Yeah. So
you just said like 30% of the workforce in that study said they prefer or they feel more productive working remotely. 30% of the time, then we're giving people that opportunity. 100% of our people the opportunity to do that.
Correct. And there's a great study, if you're going to download anything from our show notes, this OWL Lab study. It's called The State of Work Remote, and it's from 2021, so it's a recent study, and we've taken a lot of stats from there. So I would definitely encourage you to download that study. But one of the things that they said relative to this is that 92% of the people surveyed expect to work from home at least 1 day a week, while 80% expect to work remotely 3 days a week. So again, what has happened is the expectations have changed. And so when there is the type of work that can cater to work remote, if leaders are completely ignoring that because that's just not what they want, then they're going to end up with a retention issue and certainly a recruiting issue. Right. And so it's something that we just simply we can't ignore it.
Yep.
And so again, the benefit is definitely really shines through on recruiting, and it's definitely something that we've experienced firsthand. I think another, especially with gas prices, so this makes a lot of sense, but commuting time and saving monies for employees. So whether that's gas, but time is money. So I believe that has definitely been a benefit to work remote, is that the time that people get back. Now, as we mentioned, we had to work through the balance of, that time savings doesn't necessarily all have to go to the company. It can be also for yourself. So if you do have that time. So when we introduced work remote before the pandemic, it was so that people would have time to do things for themselves, whether that was a workout, whether, during the holidays when we would work remote, you would have time to throw the pie in the oven. Like I just envision people like being able to, if they needed, to take a quick break, they could get a gift wrapped. Like I loved that autonomy to pour more of yourself into your life. And I loved that piece of work remote. Now, when it was forced and expected 5 days a week.
Weird.
That was hard.
It was weird.
Yeah, and we definitely struggled with that. I think the other is obviously the end result is you want happier and healthier employees, and we're a company that's committed to being, about the humans who work here first and foremost, and their well-being, and then part of that well-being is doing the amazing work that we do that has a positive impact on society. Yeah. But then also being an environment that supports their lives. And so another stat that we found, it says 1 in 3 people would quit their job if they could no longer work remotely after the pandemic, with an additional 18% undecided. And that's also known as the Great Resignation. It played into the Great Resignation. Now we have I forget what the term is. I mentioned it in a previous episode, but it's the Great Regret. It's called the Great Regret. The Great Regret. Because I think a lot of folks chase down work remote, and there's some downsides to work remote as if you've experienced it that you could probably attest to. And I think there's some out there, there's a group of people that's their jam and that's what they love, and they thrive in that space. I think there's a larger group of us in the middle who probably like a little bit of both, like it to be evened out. And then there's this group that absolutely, and we have them here at our company, that just did not feel productive at home and liked the environment that being in the office created for them. So it's what it comes down to is businesses and leaders really thinking you're not going to be able to please everyone all the time. And if you care about having a unique and diverse group of people, you have to think in that capacity, like, and make people feel like they're getting most of what they want. Mm-hmm. And if your business can thrive and survive and thrive with that flexible nature, then I think we're kidding ourselves if we think that we can move forward without thinking about work remote in a more expanded way than we ever have before.
Right.
So
it's so interesting economically, like just thinking about this when you're speaking. So this report, this Owl Labs came out in 2021. It's 2022. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, but still when I go out like to dinner, and so it's service, like people that aren't able to work remotely, service industry, it seemed like they're struggling. Lines seem longer at the grocery store. It seems like people are understaffed in restaurants. So they haven't gotten their footing back relative to people deciding that that industry is for them. And so it's just the effects of that and these people moving on to different types of jobs, whatever that is really sort of leaving behind these great jobs, quite frankly.
In some cases. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but if people have prioritized work remote as super important for their lifestyle, well, I just wonder what percentage of jobs that is available in the United States. I would guess it's probably a lot. There's probably a lot more jobs where work remote is not available.
I would definitely say that if you think about,
So our unemployment rate, we're just in trouble. No, not to go all economic on everybody, but kind of like to think about it as we're living our lives, we can see it.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're not only seeing it and feeling it in our own recruitment efforts here, but we're also seeing it. I see it as a consumer in these everyday situations that I'm in where I'm like, why can't they hire more? Like my husband's always like, why isn't anybody, are they not getting applications? I'm like, no.
Right.
I think people have opted out.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Again, there's a lot of decisions
but this clearly is one.
Yeah, the pandemic caused us to rethink a lot of things in our lives in general, and work being one of them. Whether we were we were working at a place that wasn't ideal and we had a chance to go somewhere else, or if we were in a profession or doing a type of work that we just really wasn't filling us up. And then of course, if the lure of working remote sounded great at first, probably to a big majority of the people that had that option. And then we lived through it. And I think then it started to become a reality. And I think where I think it's interesting what you bring up is that the people who absolutely insist on working remote are seemingly some of the people, at least the ones that I know in my life, the people I interact with. I expect to work remote, but they seem to have the least amount of patience for people in the circumstance that you just described. Like for instance, in a restaurant where the service is slow. Yeah. And I'm like, you're someone who demands to work remote, but you're
to be queen.
Oh yeah. But the wine's taking a little bit longer because we're understaffed. Anyway, it's just a general observation that I've made. And it's, something that we have to consider. But I think, we, as a company, like I said, it took us a while to figure out how to do work or remote in a way that first and foremost, served our clients. We couldn't falter there, but then also served the difference, the unique perspectives that people who make this company, our team. Yeah. And it took us a while to figure things out. Yeah. And then once we were able to figure it out and we were able to communicate it in a way of here's why we're going to do it this way, and allowed them to give input through that. Again, we talk about the fact that we have an anonymous survey tool that we use called Tiny Pulse. The fact that we are able to use that as a way for our team to feel included in this decision-making process. I heard you. I'm able to say as CEO, I heard what you said, and here's what we're going to do because of that. Here's what we're going to trial. here's what's forever. I mean, I announced that, like I said, we had very sporadic work remote days before the pandemic. Once we returned to the office partially, I announced way before that forever at the company, we would work remote on Mondays.
That's right.
They knew that we would be working remote on Mondays. Monday's more of an operational day. It's the day that we update our clients on all that's going on. And in my mind, I thought what a relief to know that on Monday you can just stay in your leisurely clothes and get to work or go work out, and you have that time, and then you're hitting the ground running. And we immediately saw an uptick in motivation because, again, those that were on the fence about whether they wanted to be back in the office, the Monday thing helped. And then what we realized is that, okay, with the Mondays and the occasional Fridays, I think what we learned is that when they didn't necessarily know when a work remote day was coming, so we tried just throwing some out randomly, that didn't go over so well. So
people like control and planning.
Absolutely. And so that's what we realized is that I don't know that it's control, but I think what they want, and I know because we discussed it, is that people want autonomy. Mm-hmm. Autonomy to know that I'm going to work remote on this Monday and this Friday, so therefore I'm going to go work remote in California where my family is. I'm not going to have to take time off. I don't need to be off that whole day on that Monday because whatever. I can be flexible to go do these other things, or great if you have a lake house or whatever it is, as long as there's great Wi-Fi and you're in a position to look professional in front of our clients and each other. That's something we realize, and we're fortunate as a business to be able to do that. Now, us getting our arms around what worked for this business took us a little bit, but we do know that the 30+% work remote at this company is it's the right mix for what we do based on the needs of a unique group of people that make up our team. Now, what we also learned, and believe me, I thought about it. I write that rent check. It hurt. Well, I don't write the check. Come on. But
I know what you mean.
I sign off on that thing.
Sure, it's coming out of your business every month.
It's large. It's a large amount of money. Yeah. And I thought to myself, why would we did it for a year. We worked remote for a year. And then we started to really look at the type of company that we ultimately are striving to be, which includes a company for the people, not just for them and their work, but for their development and for their progress. And so we realized that there was a benefit to being in the office as well.
Yes. God, we have to be in the office. I mean, we're a creative team. We don't have to be in the office all the time, 5 days a week, which you've already identified that.
Correct.
But what we do need to do is offer creative time for those who do need and get energized by being able to have a brainstorm with a whiteboard versus on Zoom. We know that we need time for serious meetings that we're going to have with individuals. But I just want to say this. Mm-hmm. I know for sure that the way that we do it feels good and we're appreciative. I'm appreciative. And if I'm appreciative, I know everybody else is appreciative. Mm-hmm. So we're not perfect.
No.
We're ever evolving, but we are open to learning from our team, as you've heard and I'll talk about, and taking cues and adjusting. And I think that's what we hope for everybody else.
Yeah. And I think too, what we realized was that once we got our arms around what the rules of engagement were for working remote, we were able to move forward. And then as we started to come back to the office, I think we started 3 days a week. Mm-hmm. And we did a staggered schedule because we were still trying to figure out, distancing and all of that. But once we got past that and we determined that we'd be back in the office on a lot of weeks, 4 days a week. Mm-hmm. And then now we've peppered in, again, like I said, we have set Fridays. So there's some weeks where we're only in the office 3 days a week. Mm-hmm. And then what we what we had to get intentional about was, what do we want the time in the office to really be for?
Right.
Because we had figured out the benefits of working remote.
Yes.
The productivity, the time back and for your personal lives of, not having to commute, and quite frankly, saving some money on gas, especially we didn't realize gas prices were going to go up that quick.
Yeah.
But what we had to also be intentional about was, what is the benefit to being in the office and really elevating those things? And for some people, it was very easy for us, but for us, it became about, being together.
Yeah.
And again, being a company that's so heavily invested in development.
Yeah.
That was important for us. And it was important for the people that we have now recruited into this culture. Mm-hmm. They expect the one-on-one time with their managers.
They do.
And
In person.
And they care about the time with Hannah, our director of people. They want that personalized time. They missed our celebrations. We're a pretty celebratory company. Imagine that being owned by Enneagram 7. We celebrate things and we celebrate each other, and we have these milestone meetings or milestone celebrations that we celebrate, not only birthdays and work anniversaries, but moments in our lives, houses, and now we have 2 babies on the way. Yay, we're so excited. Or graduations or whatever it may be. And, we really took a step back during the pandemic on those. We really missed that.
We did.
It also came down to we were missing a certain creative edge. We're a marketing agency.
Yeah, we're creatives.
And a lot of creative energy is to be said. It's person to person. It's people being together in a room. Whether it's whiteboarding or playing a game like a mind game like we did yesterday, it's very important to our process. And I say this to probably most people that are listening. That may not be your scenario, but I think you have to be very intentional about what is most important as to why you are wanting people in the office. And Seth Godin, again, you've heard me mention him 100 times if you listen to this podcast, but he's a big mentor and leader in our world. And he literally penned a post today. It was ironic.
So weird.
They come every morning. And what he's talking about is he's almost pushing leaders out there, kind of calling us out for this work remote scenario. And what he's saying is, if you don't do it with intention, and if you think that, just having someone back in the office to have them back in the office to keep ties on them, probably don't have the right person, or you don't have the right culture. And he's kind of calling it out. But what he is saying is, if there is a direct result, a benefit to the business and a benefit to the culture for being in office, then be able to articulate that. Yeah. So again, going back to being able to explain why it is important for us to be here and why it benefits you, person on this team,
yes,
and why it benefits this business. And here's how we're going to interact. So I will put a link to the blog post. It's called Manage with Intent. And he gives this great example about the Washington Post. Literally recently put out a memo that forced their reporters to be in the office 3 days a week.
Just because.
They didn't say why. So just think about that. First of all, reporting rarely happens, to Seth's point, in an office.
In an office.
Reporting,
you're out.
You're writing about things that are out there.
Yes.
And so to be able to put that mandate for no particular reason. And again, they may have some reasons. I don't know what it is, but if it's mistrust of employees, if it's short-sightedness on the leader's standpoint, they're going to end up having some morale issues and definitely an attrition issues.
That's right.
And I know that you have a great story about Southwest Airlines.
Yes.
I enjoyed you sharing that with me.
Yeah. So one of our mutual dear friends, she's one of my oldest friends, worked for Southwest for 20 years.
I'm sure she appreciates you calling her oldest.
Well, it's true. We've been friends since we were 15 years old. So
Summer,
more than half.
Summer, I don't think you're old.
You're not old, because we're the same age by 10 days difference. But she worked at Southwest forever, and for 20 years. That's not forever, but in our lifetime, it's half of our lifetime. And one of the things she used to say, because early on in our career, especially when we moved to Dallas, we weren't used to like ice. That was new. I'm like, what is that? People don't drive on ice, and thank God, because it's a nightmare when they do.
Yes.
Well, she was like, well, good for you, because I had a work remote policy where I worked. I did not work here at the time, but I worked somewhere else, and we were able to easily work remote with laptops and whatnot. And she was like, great, I have a laptop, but guess what? My ass is driving in to the office, because our culture, she called it a policy, but she was, our culture is so that if it's a day where customers are showing up to fly with baggage, and there have to be pilots and flight attendants, and there have to be ground crew, gate crew, all those things, people standing at ticket counters, then it's good enough for headquarters, people who sit behind desks all day long. So that was the mantra for a long time. Now, since the pandemic, I know that Southwest has evolved into offering more work remote. It is not full work remote, but it's what you're talking about. It's work remote with intention. So it's, if you're going to work remote, then when you are in the office, it's like a flip of the script. Instead of worrying about what you're going to do when you're working remote, worry about what you're going to do when you're in the office. Use that time as leaders to get these conversations that need to be had face to face. Meet with your leaders who are probably in the office more than anybody else. Use that time to have face time, to be seen, heard. There's this awareness around you. So I love that. And she and I both talked about it. I was like, God, I can't believe it. I never would have thought, Southwest Airlines would be one of those companies, just because of that culturally rich and grounded and rooted philosophy, which I adored. That's our generation, in my opinion. So X generation and older is, if it's good enough for the goose, it's good enough for the gander. But we're having to change that. What is good for the goose sometimes is what is best for the gander. Yeah. And
again, it comes down to, we have to expand our thinking.
Yes.
As leaders, and what I struggle with as a leader was I kind of felt like I was being forced to coddle to a little bit of an entitlement. And that's why I can get a little soapbox. No, not nasty.
Not nasty. Maybe salty is the better
salty
word.
Is the absolute
salt.
Very good word.
Extra salt, please.
But is that because it can almost feel like one of those things of, we've talked about it in the work-life balance episode, and I quite frankly call work-life balance, if you expect that of him, it's bullshit. And this felt like that for a while.
Kinda.
It felt like this was an entitled expectation. And once I started to realize and see beyond my own bias as a leader for this organization, and to think about exactly what you said, like be a lot more intentional about what are the benefits of when we're remote and what are the benefits of when we're here. And let's not let a few people in our organization who probably weren't a culture fit anyway. Determine, and force us to put our feet in the sand and draw that line. And once I was able to get past my own kind of short-sightedness, because that's really what it was, and think about it from a broader perspective, that's when we were able to really lean into this hybrid model that now is
pretty fluidly, really.
Well, yeah, and it's appreciaed.
Gosh,
I get a lot of feedback as CEO about that, and I know that we're in a position, we're heavily in a continuous hiring mode, thankfully, and we're so grateful for that. Thank you to our clients and potential clients who continue to trust in us. Is that we are in a stronger position from a recruiting standpoint. So I know that those decisions are starting to really starting to pay off. And another blog post that I'll put in the show notes for you is written by our good friend, author Kristen Hadid. And I like what she talks about in this article, and her article is pretty extensive on the subject, and is that she really calls out, it's about being flexible, and it's okay. And here's something I definitely want leaders who are still in the process of figuring this out for their organizations to know, is that it's okay to trial something. So each time we made a decision at DMA, we said this is going to be a trial. We're going to try this for this many days or for this many months, and we're going to see how it goes. It's up to you and us collectively to give this a go. Like, we have to make sure. And what that did is that gave, the leaders of the organization a very clear directive. Okay, I've got to monitor this. I've got to see how this works. But it gave every single person in the company the very clear message of, we're going to try this. This is either going to be a success or it's going to be a failure. But I think the organization realized that I had a very small, literally, I just couldn't handle I was not going to allow our business to suffer for what seemed to be yet another.
It felt like a convenience for people.
It did, until I realized that it was truly something that was valued because people were protecting it.
That's right.
And when I could see people who weren't in a quote unquote titled leadership, I believe everyone is a leader.
Yes.
You all know that if you listen to this podcast. If you're new to the podcast, please know that's something I believe in my heart. It's a decision. It's not an anointed title. But for the people who hold leadership roles in this company, I could see that, or do not hold leadership roles in this company, I could see them working to help people who might be struggling with, here's how we do this here, and here's why we do it. So it really, again, I had to get out of my own way as a leader, and I had to think differently. And I think that was a generational thing.
I guess.
I think
it's
it
the
was,
same with me.
and again, it was me fighting something that really there wasn't a battle there. It was just changing my mindset. And I'm glad that we did, and I'm appreciative to this team who cares enough to make these adjustments to our business work, first and foremost for our clients, but then for us as well. And I just can see it. People love being in the office, but they also deeply appreciate working remote.
That's right.
So,
and they verbalize that, to your point.
Yeah.
Something I just anecdotally want to share this, and this is, I don't even know that you know this or not. So yay, here we go. I have had an employee, so on the reverse side of the person that took a nap, which ruins it for everybody, right? To your point, like, I was worried. That's exactly what we were both worried about, and that's exactly what happened. Week 1, somebody's taking a nap on a call. No more work remote. We didn't have the opportunity for that, but that could have been an easy decision.
yes.
1 year after that, one of our more respected around here employees, and quite frankly, someone you and I both lean on all the time from a leadership perspective, who wasn't in an anointed leadership position yet, asked me for an exception. I would like to, on our work remote day, drive across the United States using my Wi-Fi. I don't want to take a day off. And I don't want to use that time. I can work. And please let me work, because I'm going to be bored.
Yeah,
out of my mind.
I just want listeners to know she was not driving. She was in the passenger seat.
She was in the passenger seat, yes. Please let me do this. I mean, so for this person, first of all, to ask me this, she must really mean it, because she doesn't ask for much.
No, she doesn't. She's a rock star.
Yeah, a rock star. And so it was so easy for me. At first, I have to tell you, vulnerably, I was like, no. Immediately, that's what I could just see, the letters, no, no, no.
Yep.
And then I thought, I said, hang on a minute. Let me just think about this. Give me a minute. I'll get back to you. And I had to, in that moment, literally flip the script on the value that could potentially bring back to me. I needed her to do the things I had asked her to do. And I needed her to be there on a call. We had a big call with a client that day. I knew she needed to be on that call. And I didn't want her to feel like she had to sacrifice a PTO day doing nothing. When she goes, you can say, here, let me tell you this. Even if you say no, I'm going to work anyway.
Right.
And I said, so I called her back in my office like 2 minutes later. I was like, what are you doing, dummy? You know what I mean? Like, get her back in here.
Well, she's not the dummy. You were.
Me is the dummy. Yes, I am the dummy. I am the dummy. So I called her back in. I go, yes. I thought about this, and I go, you have to forgive me. Please forgive me for these old biases. I have got to get over them, but please, Godspeed.
Yes.
Let's do it. Let's see how it goes.
Right.
If you get into anything, if you have a flat, I don't know, like, let me know. Just let me know, And she did. She told me the minute she was on that morning, which I didn't. I did need that. I'm not going to say I didn't. I needed it. She knew it. I'm on. We're hitting the road.
Yeah, she respected it.
Yes.
She knew that she needed to over communicate because she asked for an exception.
Yes.
And she valued the exception. In that moment, you both built trust with one another.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, of course, there could have been a different outcome.
Yes.
There could have easily been a different outcome, but there wasn't. And
It worked.
It worked. And I think that lesson, and I remember you pitching it to me. I think you told me after the fact.
Maybe
I don't think
did.
you did.
I really struggled with it.
Yeah, but
until I didn't, and then I was like, "Wait, why did I feel like that?"
No, but I think it's good that you were vulnerable and shared that, because I seen so many times where we have to kind of check ourselves and say,
Yes.
why is the answer no? And everyone around here, by the way, at DMA, that my favorite answer is always yes. I do not like to say no. Occasionally I have to say not now.
Yes.
Because the priorities in the business, but I always want to say yes. And so what that individual did, and we don't want to call her out, but she's a rock star. Yeah, you know who you are, and she's probably laughing right now.
Yeah.
Is that she knew how to ask for the exception.
And deliver.
And that is important. So what we call that around here at DMA is a linchpin. Linchpins, and that's a wonderful book by Seth Godin, if you haven't read it, and I would even advise you to listen to that particular one, is that linchpins can anticipate where reservations might exist and extinguish them. So she knew that when she asked for the exception, she accepted the responsibility of that, but she had a plan in place that could put you at ease. All you had to do was just get over your own habitual thinking of what was right or what was not. And you did that, and you did that swiftly. And then she delivered. And so many times I think it's easy for us to be on the opposite side of that particular track, to give someone an exception and to be let down. And then therefore you kind of pull back. Yeah. You pull back. And that's something we've had to learn a lot along the way. And I think work remote is one of the things that a lot of leaders can use as an opportunity to build trust, to quite frankly expand their thinking, and to really look at the workforce for their particular business in almost a more innovative way. And so if you say there's, no to certain things, I would just ask you, and this is something I have to practice continuously, and this is what Megan just explained, why am I saying no? What are my reservations? And then be able to have the trust instilled with the people in your organization to where you can have an open conversation of, here's what I'm worried about. I'm not saying no. We just had this conversation with management team yesterday on a hire. There's someone that the team, half the team, the hiring, we put together hiring teams when we are interviewing candidates, and half the hiring team wants to hire this individual, and the other half, there's a question mark. And, what are the question marks?
Yeah.
And we really dove into what they were and what are the reservations. And then what happened is the team that wants to say yes, wants to bring this individual, they're taking accountability for the reservations of the others. And so, I don't know, I'm kind of we went on a rabbit trail there, but it just, when I've been thinking about this topic, which I wasn't really thrilled to talk about, but when I think about it, it really was a watershed moment over the course of 2 years of us becoming more flexible leaders.
Yes.
And to adapting and adopting without losing the things that we value and we know are important to this organization. We didn't lose anything by going 30+% work remote. We only gained. And that has also required us to have a very intentional culture and intentional communications around expectations.
That's right.
So that's how we've been able to ultimately succeed down this path.
I love it. What do you know for sure, Danelle, about work remote? Tell us about that.
I've already said it, but I think that what I know for sure from a business perspective is that you're presenting flexibility and freedoms, and you're elevating autonomy. And I think that, again, I know in some organizations, our days are set. Some organizations, the people get to pick which days they work remote. I know that's true for a lot of organizations. But even though we're not set up that way, I know that the team feels more trusted.
They do.
They feel that. So I know that trust is a big part of this. It's what I know for sure about our experience with work remote. And I know for sure that for when we're intentional about the decisions we make, I don't care if it's about work remote or whatever, when we can articulate the why behind a decision in a way that resonates with our team, which usually requires repetition. Just a little side note, that I know for sure that your business, can progress even in a significant moment of significant change, like work remote happened into a large portion of the workforce. Yeah. And so anyway, that's what I know for sure.
Yeah. And I think you said it. I mean, for me, it's trust. I was thinking while you were answering, what did I think? Trust, you nailed it, because really, and you can go back to our episode on trust. It's the foundation of this culture here. And so if that is true, then work remote needs to be intentional about the amount of trust we are extending, which equals your freedom that you talked about in autonomy.
Correct.
Love it. All right, let's talk about something else. Music-y.
Okay. Yeah. Yay.
I know. Enough about this work remote stuff. Let's talk about music. So we recently saw one of our music icons in person together.
We did.
And it was not last weekend, but the weekend before last. Feels like it was yesterday. Yes. Only if it were yesterday, I wouldn't be able to speak right now because I screamed at the top of my lungs and had laryngitis the next day. Which is not always good.
I've not ever heard you scream sing.
I'm sorry.
No, you don't apologize.
I ruined it. I feel like I might have ruined it. I feel like I need to apologize to people.
Maybe around us, but not for me.
Man.
I was screaming just as loud.
You were. You were. As if I couldn't hear. Okay, who did we see? I don't think we said who we saw.
Our another Queen Bee, but Brandi Carlile.
Yes.
BC.
Yes.
Brandi, again, if you listen to our podcast, we've talked about her a number of times, but to get to see her live, this was the second time I saw her, but I have not seen this tour yet. And
which she's just at the beginning of.
She's at the beginning of.
Yeah.
It was, and I'm not the only one who has described it this way, but other people that I know that have seen her, it's a spiritual experience. So first of all, I think her music it's a gift from the heavens. So much of her story and the music, but to see her live it was so beyond my expectations, and they were very high.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Very high.
Oh, man. These are bloated expectations from September of 2021.
Well, yeah.
The book. Yeah, the book and the album.
Yes. Well,
This album that she's touring now came out. And so we memorized every word on purpose or not. I don't know. But it's like we just know the words. And so we sing every line.
We do.
Do y'all all know who Brandi Carlile is? Okay. If you don't, look her up quickly or ask Spotify to play her, ask Siri to play the song. Hey, Siri, play The Story by Brandi Carlile, because that is the quintessential Brandi Carlile song. So if you guys know The Story, you know Brandi.
Right. It's the thing that put her on the map.
It did. Yeah. And she sang it, and I think we cried a little.
We did. Well, we cried a lot.
Because it's just so beautiful. But this woman showed up in full regalia, like concert rock and roll regalia.
Well, you have to set the stage.
Okay.
It was in Dallas, Texas, in the middle of outside, 3 digits.
July 12-ish?
Over 100 degrees.
Yes.
And
100 degrees, guys.
And she
wiped her makeup off.
Yeah, it was.
We were all sweating. Nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
No.
And that's what I liked about it, is that I was sweating so hard that you couldn't see my tears.
That's true.
Because I was so emotional about this incredible artist. And again, I don't, the amount of talent that's on that stage.
Good Lord.
And it was all about that. Yeah. She's an artist that is so incredibly talented herself, but she has surrounded herself with this band, and the stage is not overdone. It's all about the music and connecting with her audience. And when I say her, I mean her and her bands.
Yes, her people, yeah.
Yeah,
her
audience. Team. And it feels like she's only singing to you.
Yeah.
And
like a best friend.
Yes. And it's so, she is an incredible star, but it doesn't come off that way. No. I don't know how to explain it. And I've been to so many concerts, but it felt like a friend walked out on stage, and it felt like someone, it was so incredible. So we really wanted to bring this up. I didn't know which episode she was going to spring it on, but because it's the beginning of the tour, and she keeps adding dates because
I guess we're going to go.
Oh yeah, we're going.
Else.
Oh yeah, we're going. We're going to a lot more.
See you soon, Brandi.
Yeah, see you soon. But if you're listening, Brandi, please, again,
reach out, Brandi.
Yeah, please, because we would love for you to work on the score for our podcast.
You're our best friend. That's what we want.
Anyway, give it a consideration for one of your summer, fall tours, because it is incredible. And I hope, and again, if you want to share your favorites about Brandi or music, if you're already a fan, please let us know. One
thing you said when we were recapping the concert, you said it is about the music, but moreover, it's about the emotion. And I think that's why we are so enthralled with her. Like, if you're listening to this, you're like, yeah, these girls are so excited about Brandi. Yes. Mm-hmm. The answer is yes. And if you think about the alignment with Atlas of the Heart and this album,
Brene Brown's book, same. Atlas of the Heart. Yeah, it's about emotion.
But we were finding ourselves and our emotions at the same time Brandi's singing about it all. It's almost as if they conspired.
It is.
Maybe they did. Maybe we should have them both
And then you throw Adele's album in there, 30.
Good Lord.
I mean, talk about emotions and vulnerability. But yeah, I mean, Brandi, if you decide to listen to the book, and again, we highly recommend you listen to the audiobook, Broken Horses. And if you decide to do that, you will know exactly what we're talking about.
Yes.
And her lyrics are just incredible. And if you know anything about Brandi, for those of you who are big Joni Mitchell fans, she's literally revitalized Joni Mitchell's career, but just because she cares so much, cares so much about her music, and so there's a heart of gold there, and a genuine, authentic person who is again showing up in this imperfect. So we just had an episode on basically the gifts of imperfection, and Brandi is one of those people that are walking in that space, and it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. So I do hope that this will inspire. If you have not listened to her music, that you'll give her a shot, and if you love her, we hope to see you at one of her concerts.
Yes, and let us know you'll be there, and we'll meet for a pregame cocktail.
Correct.
All right, everyone, guys and gals, thank you so much for being with us today. As Danelle has mentioned all throughout the podcast, we will have rich details for you in the show notes, and which are on the website. So take a look, come back next week. We send you into the week with grateful hearts.
Goodbye, everyone. As always, you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Self Smarter Podcasts. You can also leave a rating or review if you enjoyed what you heard today. Not only does this mean so much to us, but it also helps other leaders and future leaders find our community. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us in becoming self-smarter. This podcast is produced by Snacks Media, and music is from a free platform. Well, that is until Brandi Carlile reaches out to us to write the original score for our podcast. Friends, have a great rest of your day.